Never been called number two.
Best makeup artist.
Hi, everybody.
So, first of all, Mr. Nicotero.
Yes.
Most of us know, some of us don't. You just had a birthday yesterday.
Yes. It's weird. I was telling people, this July 23rd is my 40th anniversary of being hired on Day of the Dead. I got hired on July 23rd, and I'm only 39, so I haven't figured out how I've been doing this for 40 years.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm excited to be
Okay, so you have done so many things that I know and I love, all right? I must talk to you about Wishmaster. It's
I
a
forget about that movie. It's weird because, I like you said, I've done a lot of stuff. Kind of forget, like, oh yeah, that was a lot of fun because, Bob directed it, who was a partner at K&B, so it was me, Howard, and Bob. And it was like Bob's first, he directed The Demolitionist when we were doing From Dusk Till Dawn, but Wishmaster was like, there was a lot of effects in it, and of course, Bob did the Who's Who casting of, Robert Englund was in it, Kane was in it, and everybody was in that movie.
Rico Ross was here today, isn't it?
Oh, I didn't even remember that.
Yes.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was Bob's second unit director, so he would shoot scenes, and then he would go off and film other stuff, and then I would go and shoot a bunch of the inserts of when Robert Englund vomits up that weird monster and grows into this, and we're used every trick in the book, reverse photography and all that kind of stuff.
So did Robert think of all those kills, or was it a team effort?
I think it was a team effort. A lot of it was in Pete Atkins' script. But, it's kind of like the situation that I've been in Walking Dead for the last 14 years, which is you kind of have the keys to the kingdom, like a zombie kill shows up, and no one's really gonna question me if I pitch it, what if we did it this way? Most of the time they'll be like, well, you're the expert, so that sounds like, yeah, that sounds good. So that's kind of, Wishmaster was sort of like that. We all kind of got a chance to jump in, Andy T-Roth and his makeup. We did, I was telling somebody, I think I told my wife this recently, we almost did burn the stage down.
Which one?
It was the throne room with all the statues. At the end, when they all started exploding, because the special effects guy, Bob had wanted the explosions of the statues to look like Independence Day, or it would go, it would start exploding from the top and explode downward. So we're on this set, and Chad's working. There's one way in or out, which is illegal, which of course we didn't know that. And the dummies were standing in the doorway, and we put the cameras in there, and when the special effects guy detonated the dummies, the first piece explodes, and then there's all these little particles of foam in the air. And the second explosion went off and ignited all the particles that were in the air. And then the third explosion went off and ignited those particles. So everything hit the ground and caught on fire. And we're standing there going, well, there's the exit right where the fire is. So we all had everybody took off, and we all got out safely, thank God. The fire department came, put the fire out, and then we went back in, and they left the camera there. So the camera was like a pile of liquid plastic and glass. So, my memories.
How did you guys decide what those statues were going to look like?
Well, that was a lot of fun because we had a Buddha, we had the archer, we had the Roman soldier, and we made the suits that the actors could wear, and we made the heads so that they didn't have expression, and they just looked like living statues. So we made full suits, and a lot of the guys, the thing about the Wishmaster was a lot of people that worked at the shop played those parts. Because we built everything around the guys. If you ever worked at K&B, most likely you would be in the movie at some place, like wearing a costume or being in makeup or something. Because if it takes you 6 or 8 weeks to build something, it's always easier if you're working at the next table. Hey, let's see if this fits. And fit it on. I think we all, I don't remember if I had a cameo or Wishmaster. I don't remember, honestly, because I know I was shooting second unit. But everybody else in the shop all had cameos.
Yeah, Especially in that party scene. Like,
Yeah, the
so
party
many
scene.
people.
So everybody, Howard was in there, and yeah, all the KB guys were in there.
You know, on the podcast, I have one of our segments is favorite kill. We did Bushmaster last year. And it was the most difficult thing we've ever had to do is to pick a favorite kill.
Well, the kill we did on Bob with the piano wire running around. That was pretty cool. I like it.
Did you guys take any inspirations from other projects, other movies?
Well, it has a very 80s
Right.
feel to it.
Because the vomit form, for me at least, it resembled you guys too.
Yeah, those little
bit.
guys, those little
And
thing.
then the massacre really reminded me of Hellraiser 3, which, you know, Atkins was part of as well,
Yeah.
right?
Very true. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of it.
And I'm like, but it like brought all the best parts of those things together. It was so great.
And it was a fun shoot. You know, the studio where we filmed that was like a couple blocks away from K&B, so we could
Oh,
go to work and it's like, oh, you gotta go to set and just drive.
That's easy. Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun shoot. But again, you know, I feel like we're all just a bunch of kids who got given, you know, a little bit of money to make this movie, so we're like, are we paying attention? I remember going to the first screening, and it was, I think it was the screening where Wes was going to decide to put his name on the Wes Craven Presents. So they had a screening in Hollywood, and Wes was there. You know, they would screen like the reels, you know, so the first 25 minutes or something. After the first 25 minutes, they were changing the reels, and I went, that movie's fucking great. I would put my name on that movie. I said it really loudly. And Wes was sitting behind me giggling because he knew it. I was trying to get Wes, you should put your name on this movie because it's good.
Okay, so we'll throw it out to the audience. Audience questions, anyone? Yes.
When you were younger and wanted to put, like, what drove you to get into special effects? You know, was it a movie you saw or something that saw you that triggered that I want to do that?
Well, it's funny because I grew up in Pittsburgh, and you know, my dad's a doctor, so the obvious was that I was supposed to, you know, follow his footsteps and be a doctor. But there was a TV show on called Show of Theater. It was hosted by Bill Cardell. Bill Cardell was in Night of the Living Dead, played the reporter. So I really loved scary movies. Like, I was like terrified. Like, I would watch movies and then I would have nightmares. I couldn't sleep, and my mom would try to go, why do you watch that crazy stuff and get nightmares?
Yeah.
But I loved it. I couldn't not watch it. So I think for me, you know, my original thing was I loved Star Trek and Lost in Space, and so I wanted to build miniatures and models. Like, I thought, oh, I want to do models. Like, I remember seeing like the Design Adventure and Towering Inferno and all the miniatures. And I was really intrigued by that. And then Jaws came out, and then I saw the shark, and I went, oh, wow, that's cool because the special effects guys built this big 25-foot shark. Oh, that's kind of cool. So maybe it's not just miniatures, maybe it's building like full-size props and things, animatronics, and then Dawn of the Dead. And you know, I'd always loved the Universal Monsters, Creature of Black Lagoon, Wolfman, so Planet of the Apes, The Exorcist. I was always interested in the makeup, but I think Dawn of the Dead, having the fact that it shot, you know, a half hour from where I grew up, it kind of sort of sunk to me in a different way. And I went, oh, yeah, I think that's what but it was a hobby. Like, I was interested in it, so I ultimately got to meet George, and then met Tom Savini, and got to be friends with them. So when they were shooting stuff, they would invite me out to set. I was like this 15-year-old kid. I got my learner's permit and went to the set of Creepshow when they were filming and walked through the sets of the crate. And I'll never forget, like, I walked into a gymnasium in an abandoned high school. And you walk in the door, and you turn right, that was where Tom's lab was. And if you go straight, it's just a bunch of wood flats. And you turn the corner, and all of a sudden you're on a movie set. And it was the first movie set I had ever been on. And I was really sort of intrigued by the fact that you could just go from one place and take 2 steps, and now you're in a different world. And I went, oh, this is cool. And it was really, and it was the set was the basement for the crate. And there was a big swatch of like blood on the floor. So I was like, what happened here? I didn't know what was going on. Later, realize what it was. So I visited that set a lot, and I kind of got the bug. I still went to college and was going to be a doctor, but I kept in touch with George, and I kept in touch with Tom, and we became really, really close. And then Day of the Dead, I went to have lunch with George one day in his office in Pittsburgh, and he said, "Hey, good news, we got the green light to do Day of the Dead." Now, if you flash back 3 years earlier, they had offered me a job on Creepshow as a production assistant. Because that was kind of, he was a small family. So you could sort of like, you knew them, they would be like, "Hey, come on, we're going to work, let's just everybody get together, it'll be fun." And I had turned it down because I was getting ready to go to school, to college. And then Day of the Dead came up, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. So I took the job as Tom's assistant. And my job was ordering supplies, ordering materials, breaking down the script, and then calling, getting resumes from all the makeup artists and stuff. So I had never done it before. I didn't know how to do it. I just had created this job for me. And by creating that job, it was a job nobody else had ever done before. Tom had never had someone to do those kinds of things. So ultimately, a couple years later, when I moved to LA, nobody had ever worked with someone like me. I knew the nuts and bolts of how to build it, and I had the experience of being on set, but I also understood the business end of it. So I have this sort of phenomenon in a way. So that's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if this is like a weird or like a personal question.
The weirder the better.
But I once saw an interview with George Romero talking about how I think he was offered a directing job on Walking Dead for an episode or two.
Yeah.
And I think he said something along the lines of it hits a little too close to home. He didn't like trash the show or anything, but I think he might have felt like it took too much of his idea.
No, he trashed the show, which is by the way 100% understandable from George's perspective. This is the way he put it to me, because after we did season 1, Frank Darabont called me and said we should have George Romero come direct, and I said absolutely. I mean it's his genre. And I called him and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, look, let me tell you something." He said, "Your zombies are your zombies. My zombies are my zombies. I think it's okay to keep them separate." And then we did, they had a screening of Day of the Dead in Hollywood. And it was me, George, John Harrison, there was a bunch of people on the panel. And somebody asked George, like, "Well, how do you feel about this whole onslaught of zombie stuff?" And George said, which I thought was very smart. He said, "Look, for years and years and years, I was the only kid in the sandbox. It was my sandbox. I created the sandbox. I put the fucking sand in it. It was my sandbox." And he's like, "Now everybody's my sandbox. Kicking sand on me." And that's true. I mean, he's the guy that created this genre. He created you get bit by a zombie, you come back, you gotta shoot him in the head, that was all George. So I thought it was really interesting. And then I had a piece to add to that, because I said what I think perpetuated the zombie genre and made it more relevant to today's culture was video games. Because when you have House of the Dead, you have Resident Evil, and you make them first-person shooter games where you can have the player put a toy gun in their hand and point at the screen. All of a sudden, the person playing the video game has their own fate in their hands. If you can shoot zombies, you can win. So George answered Sandbox, and I said, "Look, to me, it was Resident Evil and House of the Dead, because all of a sudden, when those video games took off and opened the world to a whole new generation of people who didn't watch Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead, never seen those movies. So then in 2003, Resident Evil movie comes out, 28 Days Later comes out, Shaun of the Dead comes out, Dawn of the Dead remake comes out, and now everybody's making zombie movies. So if you really think about it, that's where the sort of resurgence of the zombie genre came. The Walking Dead just did something that none of the other ones did, which was it put it in everybody's living room every Sunday night. Every Sunday night, there were zombies in your house. I put it in, so I know. So I think, and look, and honestly, George has every right, to be a little tweaked about it, you know, because he's like, dude, this is my baby, this is my thing. But I think that The Walking Dead came after all this other stuff, and The Walking Dead just kind of made it, because it put it into everyone's living room and everyone was, it sort of exploded. I think that was why George reacted the way he did. Yes?
I'm a super fan of yours. Every time The Walking Dead come out, I just take a picture of the zombies. You make beautiful makeup. What motivates you to be the award-winning makeup artist that you are? And I loved all of I looked you up on your IMDb.
Yeah, my IMDb is a lot of shit. And it's funny because like people would come and go, Walking Dead, and then they look at my IMDb and like, oh shit, like you've done all this other stuff. I mean, I had a little bit of a life before The Walking Dead, and then The Walking Dead kind of, fortunately for me, put my work in the forefront, like we were saying before. But you know, it's interesting because a lot of, you know, I worked on Day of the Dead, I worked on Land of the Dead with George. So I feel like as an artist, every artist's craft, you want your art to evolve from project to project. And we've done a lot of zombies. We did zombies in House on Haunted Hill. We've done zombies in different things. But you know, you always will take something that you learn and you want to evolve your art and your art form. You know, a lot of it for me has to do with the fact that I did have a pre-med background. You know, I studied biology, I studied anatomy. So the stuff that we do looks real, like it's, you know, you peel your skin off. I know what it looks like. It's bloody, but so a lot of the zombie stuff that we do, we strive to make it feel anatomical. So there's little flourishes that the audience may not know they're seeing it, but they'll see it. They'll see like, oh, there's a jawbone there, and it moves when the zombie opens his mouth. Well, that's just like my jawbone. Yeah. So I think that makes a big difference in those little flourishes. Good question. Yes.
I'm wondering if you could talk to us about Army of Darkness. That's like my second favorite movie of all time. And just like, what was your inspiration for that, and how did you decide on the makeup for that?
Well, you know, we had a really great history with Sam. You know, before K&B existed, we worked on Evil Dead 2. So Evil Dead 2 was pretty much the project that made Howard, Bob, and I realize, wait a minute, we should just do this together and start our own company. So we knew how Sam worked. Sam had a really unique sense of humor. A lot of his gags are Three Stooges gags. Even the voice, hey guys, then you hear the voices of the Deadites and it sounds like Mo, Larry, Curly. That's Sam's thing. And then Evil Dead 2, you know, when the eyeball fly ball happens, that's out of a Three Stooges episode. Like, he would tell you that. So when we got into Army of Darkness, I think we had a better sense of what Sam was like as a director. Because it wasn't, you know, let me back up. When we were doing Evil Dead 2, there's a scene that we shot where Ash is in the woodshed and the door flies open and Linda's severed head comes in with the chainsaw. And I remember reading that and thinking, that's a terrifying image. Like, if you really think about this headless creature with a chainsaw attacking you. And I remember thinking how scary it was. And then we built the puppet, and I think Howard was lying on this little dolly with a cable on it. And they would say action, and Howard would kick the door in with his foot, and they would pull the puppet in, and one of the guys was up above with a monofilament holding a chainsaw. And I remember thinking, that's a little silly. It's kind of like cartoony. It looked cartoony. It didn't look like this horror visual. It looked a little cartoony. And then when, you know, the chainsaw goes and he pulls up the crowbar and he goes backwards and all the blood, and then you see Bruce and all the blood is Bruce in the face. And it was a little cartoony. And then I realized, okay, Sam's just torturing Bruce Campbell here. Any opportunity he could get. So when we got into Army of Darkness, I think we had a much better understanding of Sam's zany characteristics, and that aspect of his, the thing about Sam is great is the movies are awesome. Like, you watch Simple Plan, you would never believe that Simple Plan was made by the same guy who made Army of Darkness. But there was a lot of Ray Harryhausen influences in Army of Darkness. When we made the Deadites, that was all Army of Darkness. The skeletons and everything, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And Sam's one of those directors who he'll draw every single shot. Every single shot was storyboard. The storyboard artist named Doug Lefto, I don't forget. So when we're shooting a movie, we got a booklet, which I still have, about that thick. It had every single image. So you'd go to set, and like, what are we shooting tonight? That's the image. So the whole crew could look at the storyboard page and go, that's what we're shooting tonight.
Yeah.
So it made it,
No
it
question.
helps everybody visualize exactly what we're doing. And Sam was always really, really good at knowing exactly what he wanted. Now, like every single director, they always want more. So there was one shot I remember we had the Deadites with the bagpipes.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous because they had
I personally like the bone.
the bone flutes. Yeah, but on top of it, it's like they had kilts and then they had beards. There was no skin, but they had beards. I never could figure that out. It was one of those things. But Sam was always the kind of guy that, we had 10 skeletal puppets, and then I think we had 10 of the partially decomposed puppets. So we had like 20 puppets. So Sam would be the kind of guy that would be like, okay, we're going to shoot 4 flute in the foreground, but yeah, we need some more stuff in the background. And he's like, I said, well, how many puppets do you want? He's like, how many do you have? I said, 20. I want 20! Like, we wanted everything. Plus we had 40 or 50 people wearing masks and wearing the armor, and then we even made costumes. We've talked about this in a long time, so thank you. We had costumes of just skulls with bones glued onto black spandex, and you'd stick them in the background, or you'd throw a scarf, or you'd throw something on them. And it was like 2 months of shooting nights in acting, where you take all those people to go out there and you put all the suits and all the costumes. And then we had makeups that we did on some of the people. But it's grueling, and that shoot took a long time. And then there was a lot, Sam used every trick in the book because CG didn't really exist then. So we used the process called intravision. Intravision was like the sort of, at the time, state-of-the-art rear projection. So they would do stop motion animation of characters, of stop motion of skeletons, and then they would project it on a giant screen. And in the foreground was a little set. And then I remember there's one shot where the skeletons are digging. I think they're trying to throwing dirt over somebody. I can't remember who. Maybe it was. Anyway, so on the background of the screen was this stop motion animation, and then in the foreground, we were under the set, puppeteering through the holes in the set, puppeteering the skeleton puppets, and in the foreground was the other skeleton puppets moving. So it was like every trick in the book, and that's what I loved about working with people like Sam. He was super technical, and I read an article that Jim Cameron did 2 or 3 years ago in Directors Guild Digest, and he was talking about CGI, and he said, look, if I made aliens now, it would all be digital. To me, that's a crime, because what's great about aliens, and any of the people in that other room will tell you, it's all practical. And Jim Cameron, just like Sam, used every trick in the book. There were guys in suits, there were puppets, there were miniatures, there were miniature power loaders, miniature queen and fight and all that stuff. Aliens is probably one of the most technically brilliant movies in my opinion. So when he goes, yeah, well today we would have just done it all digital. And I get it, but that kind of breaks my heart. So, back to your question. Army of Darkness is fun.
Thank you.
Yes.
So as you're just saying, practical effects versus, all digital, I'm a
Georgia?
Augusta.
Okay.
So it's close to like Atlanta and Savannah, but not too terribly close.
Okay.
So what's some advice that you give someone trying to get into the industry in today's life?
Look, I mean, that's a good question. I think, when somebody's talking to someone today at my table, and the truth is, I feel like part of my legacy when I kick off is the fact that The Walking Dead sort of reinvigorated practical makeup effects because of it in your living room. So there's a lot of young people out there, a lot of young guys and a lot of young girls who are inspired by The Walking Dead. And I think because The Walking Dead, and then you had Game of Thrones, and then you had American Horror Story. Now there's a lot of cool practical makeup effects stuff on television. So I think it's a little different. If you had asked me that question 15 years ago, I'd be like, sorry, but computer stuff.
Yeah.
But there's, I always think that there's a use for it, but the world is changing so fast, guys, in terms of the way movies are being made, and with AI, and, they're just, film companies would just like to hire less and less people and just make a movie with the 4 guys made because then they don't have to pay anybody. So it's kind of, I'm grateful that I got into the business at the time when, you needed crews and people. So, I think just keep plugging, put a great portfolio together, and really show what you're capable of doing. A lot of makeup artists, they can do beauty makeup and casualty makeup and horror makeup because, if I'm producing a TV show and I want to hire you, I want to make sure that you can slit that guy's throat and make her pretty at the same time, not in the same shot.
I love it called casualty makeup.
Well, I think I just made that up.
Are there any effects in your past, especially earlier in your career, that you're slightly embarrassed by, or that you wish you could go back with the knowledge that you have today to redo?
Yes. But I'm going to admit it, and then I'm going to lie and say I never admitted it. It's not embarrassing. Let me give a little context. When you're in the studio, you imagine how a specific thing's going to work, and you can test it. We did a makeup in Inglourious Bastards. That what was interesting about that movie was we shot in Berlin, and we wanted the makeups to be as authentic as we could. A lot of times, though, what happens is, like we did a makeup on a guy named Martin Woodkey who played Hitler. Hitler's in like 3 scenes in Inglourious Bastards, or 4 scenes. But you have to remember that when you do a prosthetic makeup on a character, you get there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you put them through the makeup. So by 6 or 7 in the morning, they're ready to go. They put on their costume, they go to set, they work all day, then they go to lunch, then they go back to set, they keep working. But the prosthetics themselves, the edges, if the actor sweats, the actor moves a lot, if it's hot, those edges, you've all seen it. You've all seen movies where you see a little pucker, and you're like, oh shit, the edges, yeah. So, in Inglourious Bastards, we shot 2 scenes with that actor one day. It was one scene in this big war room, and then at the end of the day, Quentin had one shot of the character sitting in front of a fireplace. So it was orange light on this prosthetic. And the guy had been in the makeup for 17 hours. So it was literally like about to fall off his face. And I begged him not to do it. I said, look, we can't go in there and fix it. I mean, it's been on for so long, the edges, the silicone started to fall apart. It only lasts for the day. And even when Inglourious Bastards came out on DVD, I actually called Quentin's producer and said, I will pay to have those edges digitally fixed because I wanted it to look perfect. But here's the thing, and this is the story that George Romero told me on Land of the Dead. We did one scene at the end of the movie. There's a woman who, she had a cheek appliance, gelatin cheek appliance, with a bite wound and blood tube. And George went up and directed the zombie, okay, go in it, right on the face, and rip the plug out. And he said to the actress, you just struggle and fight for your life. ready to shoot it. My guys were there getting ready to come on. It took a long time to make it look, to blend all the scenes and make it look perfect. George says action, zombie goes in, bites, the girl's thrashing, and she basically puts her arm up right in front of, right where the camera was. So you don't see it. You see elements of it, but you didn't see that rapidly. So George says, cut! That was fucking great! And he looks at me and he sees me like this. Like pouting. And he goes, what's the matter? I said, but they are blocked. And he said, Greg, let me tell you something. If something was biting your face off, do you think you would struggle? Yeah. Would you move your arms? Yeah. Well, that's what she did. See, he said it was real. I mean, it was, and that was a really, really unique lesson that I learned from George, which was, it still has to feel real. It's not just about the effect. It's about the effect. It's about the actors and how the actors sell it. The actors had to perform it. Robert Englund had to create Freddy under the makeup, and the zombies had to create the character. Mickey Rourke in Sin City had to create Marv in the makeup. So you have those little moments, and you have to separate yourself as the effects person who wants it to be perfect versus the director who's trying to capture something that's real. And the other thing he said to me was, look, nothing's ever real. Perfection is something you will strive for and you'll never get it. Because it'll never happen. Because you can't control everything. You just have to let some things be real. Yes?
Of all the various effects you've done over the years, which one would you say was the most complicated to pull off? And assuming it's not the same one, which one was the most uncooperative?
Well, uncooperative is tricky because you have to take into account a lot of things. I'm going to answer the first part of that because that's probably the easier part for me because I just talked about this. In Inglourious Basterds, the end scene, Brad Pitt grabs the knife and carves a swastika into Christoph Waltz's forehead. Alright? It's like the ending imagery. So of course, the first way you think about doing that is you put a little blood tube on the tip of the knife, and the knife is dull, and then you leave a little trail of blood on the forehead. That's like the easy way to do it. But I'm working for Quentin Tarantino. Quentin doesn't want the easy way. Quentin wants to challenge you. You have to come up with a way that is going to work, that's going to give me what I want. Don't go the easy route. Go the route that gives me what I want. And I've learned that from Quentin, from working with him on, Kill Bill, and Brian House, and Reservoir Dogs. That's he wants perfection. And like I just said before, perfection is very rarely ever accomplished. So you just got to get as close as you can. So I came up with this idea. I said, okay, so we'll make a little plate that will protect Christoph's head, put the plate on, and then we have the silicone appliance. But the trick is, you want the blood to flow as if it's coming from up underneath the skin. So what we did was we created a very small channel. We put a piece of sponge in there. And so when we started pumping the blood would go through the sponge and fill the whole area up with blood. And then when Brad cut into it, the blood would just start to flow and come out of the cut, like a real cut would be. And we tested it, and we tested it, and we tried this way, and we tried that way, and we did it over and over and over again because we wanted to make sure that it was perfect. Quite would always say to me, with bastards, I would say, we did the scalping. I said, hey, if we have to do take 2, there's going to be a line there, so we might need John Dykstra visual effects to fix the line. He went, fuck you. This is 1975. They don't have CG effects. Yeah. And I'm like, it is. But there was these ways saying, no, you figure it out. That's your job. So with the swastika carving in Amanda's head, that's how we did it. And I like being pushed. And I like that, that's what Quentin demands. His movies are the way they are because of him demanding that that you throw out everything that you know and you approach it from a different perspective. And I love that challenge. That's a good challenge.
And like you said earlier, you have now have that knowledge of how to fix this problem.
Yeah.
If you take it with you in the future, well, there's this one time we had to do this, that might work here.
Yeah, I just did an interview with this guy writing a book about the making of that movie. So I like had my screen open and we were doing Zoom and I was like sharing with him. He asked me a question and I would show him the video. Here's the video test of Transport. And he like had no idea like the amount of effort and work. For us, you know, like the stuff that we do, you see it on screen for 30 frames, you know, and it's gone. You know, but it takes us 6 weeks, 8 weeks to make it. So you have to understand. I mean, and that's very difficult from an effects standpoint. So for me to move from effects into directing, I know exactly how to shoot an effect to maximize what it is. And of course, I'll always go on it longer than anybody else likes. Of course, I don't see more on these machines. All right, anybody else? How much time do we have?
We've got about 10 more minutes.
Do you have a favorite creature?
You know, we did a creature for Spawn, which was really, you don't see much of it in the movie, but you know, we did this big puppet of the Violator, and it was this 12-foot tall, and it was built right around, I think we built it just a little bit after Jurassic Park. And it had the same level of movement as the T-Rex did. It was on this big base, and the arms would go, you'd have one guy with like slave control, and he would move, and the head would go up and down, and the arms would flail around. It was like every movement you did was translated to a puppet. But the puppet was 12 feet tall. And I remember loving that puppet. I thought it was so cool, and the movement was beautiful, and it just looked great. You know, the thing was, that movie was directed by a visual effects artist. So his take on it was, well, that's good for reference, but then we'll just CGI over it. So we never really saw that puppet in the movie very much. But I loved that particular creature a lot. You know, I mean, Creepshow's been a lot of fun because Creepshow gave us an opportunity to do a lot of different creatures, and all of them were practical. And I think that the reason that people liked it was because they got a chance to like say, oh, what cluster are we going to do this week? What's going to look like? How they going to do it? And because I was the showrunner, creator, we could do whatever I wanted because I was the fucking boss, which was awesome. Because, you know, AMC would be like, what's the monster look like? I'm like, don't worry about it, it'll be cool. Like, well, can you send us some of the designs? Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, it must have got stuck in my spam folder. I forgot to send it. But we did a lot of cool creatures on Creepshow, and it was a lot of fun. But you know, there's a lot of stuff. If you look at From Dusk Till Dawn and the vampire creatures, you know, when you look at some of the werewolf stuff that we've done and some of the monsters, I mean, there's a lot. But I remember the Violator and the Spawn suit itself being a lot of fun to create those. And you know, Todd McFarlane has still been talking about rebooting Spawn. We designed a bunch of stuff for him years ago, and I keep calling him every like 6 months. Hey, when are we gonna make Spawn? Let's go, we're ready. It would be great. Let's go. It'll be fun. So
I saw that you did special effects and feature effects for Predators 2010.
yes.
So obviously it has a very classic and design, but I was curious when you're doing the feature effects for a pre-existing classic creature, how do you bring your own take onto the monster without, portraying the original or, alien?
Yeah. Well, Predators was a really fun show for us because not only did we get to recreate the classic Predator, but then we had these other 3 Predator creatures that were like the Berserker and the Falconer and the what was the third one? Falconer and then the one with the tusks. So we actually got a chance to not only recreate that one, and I worked on the original Predator in Los Angeles for a lot of the reshoots, so I was there, saw the original suit. But I like the idea that, you know, when that predator's face is revealed, we were able to create a different look for it. I mean, every Predator movie, I think, you know, I love the stuff that Alec Gillis did on Prey. I think Prey's a really, really bad movie because the fact that they talk like it's modern day and the fact that the woman lead character is treated like their perception of how a modern woman would be treated with all these hunters, but you think about the way that a female would be treated in a tribe like that, the women were like the ones who made those the movie drove me a little crazy. I'll be honest, but I love the creature design, you know. So it's a lot of fun. So I really was proud of the chance to sort of design our own sort of version of what a predator creature would look like. You know, the thing about that was the script was so similar to the original Predator movie in terms of them being put on this alien planet and fighting, you know, to sort of stay alive. I just think it didn't sort of land as well with. I think it's a better movie now if you go back and watch it now, but I think it could have benefited from just being a little different.
It's all right behind the person.
Yeah, the guy with the red hat. You had a question?
Oh, yeah, quick question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. What's the best movie for work?
You know, I would probably say Sin City. You know, the interesting thing about making that movie was it was all shot on green screen. Like, we had all the actors, so we would shoot with Mickey Rourke 1 week, and then 2 weeks later, Benicio del Toro would come in, and then 2 weeks later, Bruce Willis would come in, and they would shoot scenes, but none of them were in the same room. So they would shoot, they would react to somebody that wasn't there. I think Marley was in part 2. Marley was in, I think, Sin City 2. But anyway, it was really fascinating, and what we did was, you know, Robert did a shot for shot, panel for panel from the graphic novel. So much like with Sam Raimi, they would take the graphic novel, and they're like, that's the panel we're shooting today. So we'd set the camera up, we'd know that Mickey Rourke would be here, we'd take 2 steps there and stop. And then to see, and again, this was before, you know, Robert was ahead of his time. This was right around or just after Phantom Menace had come out. But Sin City was like one of the first movies that had all digital backgrounds, and the characters were all practical, and it was so stylized, it was so different, that I still watch that movie and think, man, we were way ahead of our time with that. Now everybody does it. Not everybody, you know,
But it doesn't look like that though, because I started to love that movie, and you watch the movie a million times, and I watched it and said, how did they do that? The movies that they're doing it, they don't look like that. It's not that style.
No, well, that was very stylized. In fact, we did everything in black and white. You know, all the blood in that movie, we used milk to make the blood, because all we needed was the element. And if you think about milk has a weird consistency where it kind of sticks together a little bit. It's kind of slimy. So the first couple tests, we had blood, regular fake blood that we made, which is water-based, or carob syrup-based with water, but it atomizes into little droplets really quickly. But milk tends to, like, if you put it in an airborne and you shoot it out, it kind of stays sticky and floppy. So a lot of the blood elements in Sin City we use milk. Then we put it in air orders and we shoot it in front of green screen, and then they would take the elements and they would pop the elements in.
And it really worked well with the black and white.
You never know. I always tell people that, it's like, no, exactly what you just did.
The consistency of it. Okay,